The storm hit Cedar Falls harder than anyone expected. Rain pounded the small Montana town while lightning split the dark sky. Most people stayed inside, safe and warm. But something else was fighting through the storm that night, something that didn't belong on Earth. Sektar Vorthon gripped the controls of his dying ship as it fell through the clouds. Sparks flew from broken panels around him. His green bronze scales were cut and bleeding from the crash that started 3-star systems away. He had been running for weeks, and now his fuel was gone. The ship hit the ground hard in the woods outside town. Trees snapped like twigs. Metal screamed against rock. When everything finally stopped moving, Sektar crawled from the wreckage. His amber eyes searched the darkness. Rain soaked through his torn clothing. He needed shelter, and he needed it fast. Through the trees, he saw a small barn on a hill. No lights were on in the nearby house. Moving carefully on his injured leg, the 7-foot alien made his way across the field. The barn door was old but solid. He slipped inside just as thunder shook the building. The barn smelled of hay and old machinery. It was dry and quiet after the storm's fury. Sektar collapsed in a corner, exhausted. His people would never look for him here. They had already declared him dead to them. Better dead than a traitor, they said. But he could not bring himself to kill innocent families no matter what his commanders ordered. Now he was alone on a strange world, far from everything he had ever known. Morning came with bright sunshine and birdsongs. 8-year-old Katie Morrison walked across the wet grass toward the old barn. Her red hair caught the light as she skipped over puddles. She liked to explore the farm, especially after storms. Sometimes she found interesting things that the wind had blown around. Katie pushed open the barn door and stepped into the cool shadows. She was looking at the floor for storm damage when she saw something that made her freeze. In the corner sat the biggest person she had ever seen, but he didn't look like any person she knew. His skin was covered in scales that changed color in the light. His eyes were like golden coins, watching her carefully. He had claws instead of fingernails, and when he breathed, she could see sharp teeth. Katie should have been scared. Any smart person would have run away screaming. Instead, she tilted her head and said, "Hi, are you okay? You look hurt." Sektar stared at the small, human child. In all his years as a warrior, he had never been so surprised. She showed no fear, only curiosity and concern. He tried to speak, but the words came out in his own language, harsh and growling. Katie didn't understand the words, but she understood the tone. He was hurt and tired, just like she had been after her parents died. She could see dried blood on his scales and the way he held one arm against his body. "Wait here," she said, holding up one small hand. "I'll be right back." She ran to the house as fast as her legs could carry her. Her grandmother Rose was making breakfast in the kitchen. Katie grabbed a glass of water and some of the bandages they kept in the medical kit. Rose looked up with surprise. "What do you need those for, sweetie?" "There's someone in the barn who's hurt," Katie said, trying to sound casual. "I want to help." Rose smiled. Her granddaughter had always been kind to injured animals. "That's very nice of you, dear. Be careful out there." Katie ran back to the barn with her supplies. Sektar was still in the corner watching the door. When he saw her return, something changed in his fierce expression. She knelt down next to him and offered the water. "Here," she said. "This will help." Sektar took the glass carefully. His clawed hands were huge compared to hers, but he was very gentle. The water was cool and clean. He drank it slowly, never taking his eyes off the child. Katie examined his injuries with the serious expression of someone much older. She had helped her grandmother take care of hurt animals before. She knew how to clean cuts and wrap bandages even if she had to stretch to reach his shoulders. As she worked, she talked to him in her cheerful voice. She told him about the storm and how she found him. She talked about her grandmother and the farm. She even told him about her parents and how they had died in an accident. "I was really sad for a long time," she said while wrapping a bandage around his arm. "But Grandma Rose says that sad feelings get smaller when you help other people feel better." Sektar listened to every word even though he understood very little of her language. But he understood her kindness. He understood that this small human was treating him like a person, not a monster. When she finished with the bandages, she sat back and smiled at him. There. That should help. What's your name? Mine is Katie. He pointed to himself and said slowly, Zektar. Zektar, Katie repeated, trying to copy his pronunciation. That's a nice name. Are you from far away? He looked toward the barn door, toward the sky beyond. Very far, he said in careful English. Katie nodded as if people from far away showed up in their barn all the time. Well, you can stay here until you feel better. The barn is warm and dry. I'll bring you food later. As days passed, Katie kept her promise. She visited Zektar every morning and evening, bringing food and water. She helped him learn English words, and he taught her a few words in his language. Slowly his injuries healed. Zektar had never experienced kindness like this. Among his own people, strength was everything. The weak were left to die. But this small human child showed him a different way of thinking. She was tiny and fragile, but she had more courage than many warriors he had known. In return for her care, Zektar began to help around the farm at night. He fixed broken fences with his great strength. He moved heavy equipment that had been sitting unmoved for years. He was careful to work only in darkness, when no one would see him. But secrets have a way of growing until they become too big to hide. And Katie Morrison was not very good at keeping secrets, especially from someone who loved her as much as her grandmother Rose. Rose Morrison noticed the changes right away. Katie was happier than she had been since her parents died. The little girl sang while doing chores and smiled more often. But she was also acting strange. Food kept disappearing from the kitchen, and Katie spent hours in the old barn. What are you doing out there all the time? Rose asked one morning as Katie grabbed another sandwich. Just playing, Katie said, but she couldn't look her grandmother in the eye. Rose had been a school teacher for 40 years. She knew when a child was hiding something, but Katie seemed happy and healthy, so Rose decided to be patient. Whatever was going on, she would find out when Katie was ready to tell her. Meanwhile, Katie's friendship with Zektar grew stronger every day. She brought him books with pictures to help him learn English faster. He was very smart and picked up new words quickly. Soon they could have real conversations. Why did you come to Earth? Katie asked one afternoon as they sat in the barn. Zektar was quiet for a long time. How could he explain war and exile to a child? My people wanted me to hurt innocent families, he finally said. I said no. So they sent me away. Katie nodded seriously. My daddy always said that good people protect families, not hurt them. I think you're a good person, Zektar. The alien warrior felt something warm spread through his chest at her words. No one had called him good in a very long time. As the days passed, Zektar learned more about Katie's life. Her parents had died when their hovercar crashed during a snowstorm. Katie had been staying with her grandmother ever since. Rose Morrison was kind but getting old and sick. Sometimes Katie worried about what would happen to her if something happened to Rose too. I get scared at night sometimes, Katie admitted. I dream about being all alone with nobody to take care of me. You are not alone, Zektar said firmly. I am here now. Katie smiled and leaned against his scaled arm. Despite his fearsome appearance, she felt completely safe with him. He told her stories about distant planets and amazing creatures that lived among the stars. He taught her simple words in his language and showed her how his people counted numbers. In return, Katie taught him about human customs and earth animals. She brought him picture books about dogs and cats and horses. She explained holidays and birthdays and why people gave each other presents. Zektar found human culture fascinating and strange. During this time, Katie's best friend, Tommy Mitchell, started getting suspicious. Tommy was 9 years old and very curious about everything. He noticed that Katie was always running off to the barn and talking about her new friend. What new friend? Tommy demanded. There are no new kids in town, I would know. He's not from town, Katie said carefully. He's from really far away. Tommy decided to find out for himself. One morning, he followed Katie to the barn and hid behind some old equipment. When he saw Zektar, Tommy's eyes went wide with shock and fear. The alien looked like a dragon from his favorite video games, only bigger and more real. Tommy was about to run away and tell every adult in town when he saw something that stopped him. Katie was sitting next to the huge creature, completely relaxed, showing him pictures in a book. The alien was listening carefully to her words and asking questions in English. He was gentle with her, careful not to scratch her with his claws. Tommy? Katie looked up and saw her friend hiding. It's okay, come meet Zektar. He won't hurt you. Tommy crept forward on shaking legs. Zektar watched him carefully but made no threatening moves. When Tommy got close enough, the alien spoke in his careful English. Hello, Tommy. Katie talks about you often. You are her good friend. You can talk, Tommy whispered. Yes. Katie is good teacher. After the initial shock wore off, Tommy became as fascinated with Zektar as Katie was. He asked a million questions about space and alien technology. Zektar answered patiently, enjoying the curiosity of both children. Soon Tommy was visiting the barn regularly too, but keeping the secret became harder when Rose Morrison got sick. One evening she collapsed in the kitchen while making dinner. Katie ran to get Dr. Amy Chen, the town's only doctor. Dr. Chen was a young woman who had moved to Cedar Falls after medical school because she wanted to help people in small communities. While Dr. Chen examined Rose, Katie snuck out to tell Zektar what was happening. The alien saw how worried she was and wanted to help. That night, after everyone was asleep, he carefully entered the house. Using medical knowledge from his own people, he helped Rose's body fight the infection that was making her sick. The next morning, Dr. Chen was amazed at Rose's improvement. The old woman's fever had broken and her breathing was much better. But when she checked her medical supplies, she found strange bandages and healing gel that she had never seen before. The technology was far beyond anything made on Earth. Rose, Dr. Chen said carefully, where did these medical supplies come from? Rose looked confused. She had no memory of anyone bringing new medicines. But Katie was acting nervous again, fidgeting with her hands and looking toward the barn. Dr. Chen was a smart woman. She had heard the news reports about aliens visiting Earth. She knew that some of them had advanced medical technology. She began to suspect that Cedar Falls had an alien visitor of its own. Instead of calling the authorities right away, Dr. Chen decided to watch and wait. If there really was an alien in town, and if it had helped save Rose Morrison's life, then maybe it wasn't dangerous. Maybe it needed help too. Meanwhile, Zektar was working on his damaged ship at night, trying to repair the systems that would let him leave Earth if he had to. But he was finding it harder to think about leaving. Katie and Tommy looked forward to seeing him every day. Even Rose seemed to be getting better since he had helped her. For the first time since his exile began, Zektar had found a place where he belonged. The question was whether he would be allowed to stay. Sheriff Jake Patterson had been keeping the peace in Cedar Falls for 15 years. Before that, he had served in the Coalition Defense Force, where he met aliens from dozens of different worlds. Most of them were friendly enough, but Jake knew that not all aliens had good intentions. So when strange things started happening around town, he paid attention. First, there were the electromagnetic readings. The weather station picked up weird energy patterns coming from the Morrison farm area. Then Pete Davis at the grocery store mentioned that little Katie Morrison was buying a lot more food than usual. Sally Brooks, who ran the auto repair shop, said someone had been moving heavy equipment around the Morrison farm at night. Jake decided it was time to take a closer look. Meanwhile, Katie was having the time of her life. She had never had such an interesting friend before. Zektar told her amazing stories about flying between the stars and visiting worlds where the sky was purple and the trees grew upside down. He taught her games that alien children played and showed her how to make patterns with colored stones that meant friendship in his language. Do you miss your home? Katie asked one day. Zektar thought about this carefully. I miss some things. The sound of wind through crystal mountains, the taste of moonfruit from my family's garden. But I do not miss being alone. You're not alone anymore, Katie said firmly. You have me and Tommy and Grandma Rose. We're your family now." The word family made Zektar's heart feel warm and heavy at the same time. His own family had turned their backs on him when he refused to follow orders. But these humans, especially this brave little girl, had welcomed him without question. Tommy had become fascinated with Zektar's stories about space battles and alien technology. He begged the alien to show him how the ship worked. Zektar was happy to explain, enjoying the boy's quick mind and endless questions. "Could you teach me to fly it?" Tommy asked eagerly. "Someday, perhaps," Zektar replied. "But first, it must be repaired, and I need special materials that are hard to find on your world." This was becoming a real problem. Zektar's ship needed rare metals to fix its damaged systems. Without them, he would be trapped on Earth forever. Not that he minded staying, but he wanted it to be his choice, not something forced on him. Dr. Amy Chen was getting more curious about her mysterious benefactor. Rose Morrison's recovery had been almost miraculous. The old woman was stronger and healthier than she had been in months. But those strange medical supplies were definitely not from Earth. Amy started watching the Morrison farm from a distance. She never saw anything unusual during the day, but sometimes at night there were odd lights moving around the old barn. One evening she decided to investigate. Hiding behind a tree, Amy watched as a massive figure moved through the darkness near the barn. It was definitely not human. Too tall, too broad, moving with a strange grace. But it wasn't doing anything threatening. It seemed to be working on some kind of machinery. Amy's medical training told her to be careful, but her curiosity was stronger than her fear. She had always wondered what it would be like to meet a real alien. Now she might have the chance. Next day she visited Rose Morrison for a routine checkup. While there, she asked carefully about any unusual visitors or strange happenings on the farm. "Well," Rose said thoughtfully, "Katie has been spending a lot of time in the old barn lately. She says she's playing with a friend, but I haven't met this friend yet." "Maybe I should meet him too," Amy suggested. "As the town doctor, I like to know all the children." Rose looked a little nervous. "I think Katie's friend might be shy." Amy smiled. She was beginning to understand the situation. "I'm good with shy people, Mrs. Morrison, and I'm good at keeping secrets when necessary." Meanwhile, Agent Marcus Webb was getting closer to Cedar Falls. The Coalition Intelligence Service had detected the energy signature from Zektar's crashed ship. They knew an unauthorized alien was somewhere in the area, and they were determined to find him. Webb was a serious man who took his job very seriously. In his mind, any alien on Earth without proper documentation was a potential security threat. He didn't care about the alien's reasons for being there or whether it was harmless. Rules were rules, and rules existed for good reasons. He set up his equipment in a motel outside of town and began scanning for alien technology. It wouldn't take him long to pinpoint the exact location of the signal. Then he would call in a military team to handle the situation. Back at the Morrison farm, Katie was teaching Zektar how to play checkers. He was very good at strategy games, which didn't surprise her, but he always let her win, which made her laugh. "You don't have to let me win," she told him. "I know you're smarter than me." "You are smart in different ways," Zektar replied. "You understand people's feelings. That is much harder than winning games." As they played, Katie noticed that Zektar seemed worried about something. "What's wrong?" she asked. "I think someone is looking for me," he said quietly. "My people have ways of tracking their ships. If they find me, what would happen?" Zektar didn't want to frighten her, but he needed her to understand. "They would take me away from here. I might never see you again." Katie's eyes filled with tears. "But this is your home now. You can't leave." "I do not want to leave," Zektar said gently. "But I may not have a choice." That night, Katie couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about losing her friend, just like she had lost her parents. It wasn't fair. Zektar was good and kind and helpful. He had made her grandmother better. He told wonderful stories and taught her amazing things. Why would anyone want to take him away? She decided she needed to tell her grandmother the truth. Rose Morrison was smart and kind. Maybe she would know what to do. The next morning, Katie took her grandmother's hand and led her to the barn. "Grandma," she said, "I want you to meet my friend. His name is Zektar and he's from another planet. Please don't be scared." Rose Morrison had lived through many surprises in her 72 years, but nothing had prepared her for the sight of a 7-foot alien warrior sitting in her barn, carefully mending one of Katie's torn books with his clawed hands. When Zektar saw the old woman, he stood up slowly, trying not to appear threatening. "Hello, Mrs. Morrison," he said in his careful English. "Thank you for letting me stay in your barn. I am sorry for not asking permission first." Rose stared at him for a long moment. Then she looked at Katie, who was watching anxiously to see how her grandmother would react. "Well," Rose said finally, "I suppose you'd better come inside for breakfast. It's too cold to eat in the barn." The morning Agent Webb arrived at the Morrison farm changed everything. He came with 3 coalition soldiers in dark uniforms, driving vehicles that hummed with advanced technology. Katie saw them first from her bedroom window and ran to warn Zektar. "They're here," she gasped, bursting into the barn where he was working on his ship. "Men in uniforms are coming up the driveway." Zektar had been expecting this moment for weeks. He looked at Katie's frightened face and made a decision. He would not run and make things worse for the family that had shown him such kindness. "It is time," he said calmly. "Do not be afraid, little friend. I will not let them hurt you." "No." Katie threw her arms around his scaled waist. "I won't let them take you away." When Agent Webb and his team entered the barn, they found the alien warrior standing quietly with his hands visible, clearly surrendering. But they also found an 8-year-old girl standing in front of him with her arms spread wide, as if she could protect someone 3 times her size. "Step away from the alien, child," Webb commanded. "It's dangerous." "His name is Zektar and he's not dangerous," Katie shouted back. "He's my friend." Rose Morrison and Dr. Chen had arrived, drawn by the commotion. Rose pushed past the soldiers to stand beside her granddaughter. "What is the meaning of this?" Rose demanded. "This is private property." "We're here on coalition business," Webb replied coldly. "This alien is on Earth without authorization. It must be removed immediately." "He saved my life," Rose said firmly. "When I was sick, he helped me get better." Dr. Chen stepped forward. "That's true. I found evidence of advanced medical treatment that I believe came from him. He helped an elderly human woman when he could have stayed hidden." Sheriff Patterson arrived just then, having heard the radio chatter about the operation. He took one look at the scene. A little girl and her grandmother defending an alien while soldiers stood ready to arrest him, and shook his head. "Jake Patterson, County Sheriff." He introduced himself to Webb. "Mind telling me what's going on here?" Webb explained the situation while Katie continued to glare at him defiantly. Zektar remained still and calm, but his amber eyes never left the child who was trying so hard to protect him. "I've been aware of our visitor for some time," Sheriff Patterson said, surprising everyone. "I've been watching this family, and I can tell you that this alien has done nothing but help people. He's fixed fences, moved heavy equipment, and apparently provided medical aid. I see no threat to public safety." "The law is clear," Webb insisted. "Unauthorized aliens must be removed from Earth immediately." "Whose law?" Rose Morrison asked sharply. "The law that says a person can't help their neighbors? The law that says kindness is illegal?" By now, word had spread through the small town. Neighbors began arriving to see what was happening. Pete Davis from the grocery store, Sally Brooks from the repair shop, and Mayor Linda Hayes all showed up within minutes of each other. "What's all this about?" Mayor Hayes demanded. When the situation was explained, the townspeople had mixed reactions. Some were frightened to learn they had been living near an alien. Others were curious to finally meet the mysterious helper who had been fixing things around town at night. Tommy Mitchell pushed through the crowd and ran to stand next to Katie. "Zektar is my friend too," he announced. "He tells the best stories about space adventures." "This is ridiculous," Webb said, growing frustrated. "We're not here to debate the alien's character. We're here to enforce the law." "What about his rights?" Dr. Chen asked. Even aliens have rights under coalition law, don't they? The right to request asylum, for instance? Webb looked uncomfortable. That's a matter for the courts to decide. Then let's go to court, Rose Morrison said firmly. If you want to take our family member away, you'll have to do it legally. The word family hung in the air. Everyone stared at the elderly woman, who had just claimed an alien warrior as part of her family. Zektar looked down at Katie, who was still standing protectively in front of him, and at Rose, who was facing down government agents without fear. His throat felt tight with emotion he had no words for. Mrs. Morrison, he said quietly, you do not have to do this for me. Of course I do, Rose replied. You're part of our family now, aren't you? Agent Webb realized that the situation had gotten completely out of his control. What should have been a simple arrest had turned into a community protest. News crews were already on their way, alerted by someone with a phone camera. This was about to become a public relations nightmare. Fine, he said through gritted teeth. We'll do this through proper legal channels, but the alien will be held in custody pending a hearing. No. Katie burst into tears. You can't put him in jail. He didn't do anything wrong. Zektar knelt, down to Katie's eye level. It will be all right, little one. Sometimes good people have to be patient while others learn to understand. But what if they send you away? Then I will remember every moment of kindness you showed me, Zektar said gently. And I will know that somewhere in the universe, I have a family who cares about me. Sheriff Patterson stepped forward. I'll take responsibility for the prisoner, he told Webb. I have experience dealing with alien individuals, and I think house arrest would be more appropriate than a detention facility. Webb wanted to argue, but he could see the crowd growing larger and more supportive of the alien. Television news vans were pulling up outside. The last thing the coalition needed was footage of soldiers dragging away an alien who was clearly beloved by the local community. House arrest, then, Webb agreed reluctantly. But he doesn't leave the property, and there will be monitoring equipment installed. As the soldiers set up their surveillance gear, the townspeople continued to arrive. Many of them approached Zektar directly, thanking him for the help he had provided over the past weeks. He had fixed Mrs. Johnson's broken porch steps, moved fallen trees from the road after storms, and even rescued a cat from a tall tree when no one else could reach it. Katie stayed close to Zektar throughout the day, holding his large hand in her small one. She was still worried about what would happen next, but she felt better knowing that so many people supported her friend. See, she told him as another neighbor thanked him for his help. Everyone knows you're good. The judge will too. Zektar hoped she was right, but he had learned not to expect fairness from those in authority. Still looking around at all these humans who were willing to stand up for him, he felt something he had never experienced before: hope. The federal courthouse in Helena was packed with people from Cedar Falls. They had driven 3 hours to support Zektar at his hearing. Katie sat in the front row between her grandmother and Dr. Chen, wearing her best dress and trying to look grown up. Tommy sat behind her with his parents, who had decided that anyone their son cared about this much deserved their support too. Judge Patricia Warren was known for being fair, but strict. She had handled many difficult cases involving alien law since first contact with the galaxy. This case was unusual because it involved a child's testimony and a question of family rights that had never been tested before. Agent Webb presented the government's case first. His argument was simple. Zektar had entered Earth without permission and must be removed. The law was clear, and exceptions would set a dangerous precedent. Your Honor, Webb said, we cannot allow unauthorized aliens to remain on Earth simply because they have gained the sympathy of local communities. Security protocols exist for good reasons. Then it was time for the defense. Sheriff Patterson had found a lawyer named David Park who specialized in alien rights cases. Park stood up and looked around the crowded courtroom. Your Honor, this case is about more than immigration law. This is about what it means to be human and what it means to be family. He called Dr. Chen to testify first. She explained how Zektar's medical knowledge had saved Rose Morrison's life, and how his willingness to help others showed his good character. In my professional opinion, Dr. Chen said, Zektar poses no threat to our community. In fact, he has made it safer and stronger. Sheriff Patterson testified next, describing all the ways Zektar had helped the townspeople without being asked. He had prevented accidents, assisted during emergencies, and never shown any aggressive behavior. I've dealt with dangerous individuals before, Patterson said. Zektar is not one of them. He's exactly the kind of person we want as a neighbor. Then Rose Morrison was called to the stand. The elderly woman walked slowly but proudly to the witness chair. She looked directly at Judge Warren as she spoke. Your Honor, I've lived in Cedar Falls for my whole life. I've seen good people and bad people, and I know the difference. Zektar is one of the good ones. He protected my granddaughter when she was scared. He took care of me when I was sick. He worked hard to help our community without asking for anything in return. Rose's voice grew stronger as she continued. When my granddaughter lost her parents, I became her family, not because of any law or legal document, but because we chose each other. Family isn't about where you come from or what you look like. It's about who you choose to love and protect. She looked over at Zektar, who was sitting quietly at the defense table. Zektar chose to love and protect us. We choose to love and protect him. That makes us family, and families should not be separated. The courtroom was completely silent when Rose finished speaking. Even Judge Warren looked moved by her words. Then it was Katie's turn. She was nervous about speaking in front of so many people, but she had practiced what she wanted to say. The bailiff helped her up to the witness stand and adjusted the microphone so she could reach it. Hi, she said in a small voice that carried clearly through the quiet courtroom. My name is Katie Morrison, and Zektar is my friend. Judge Warren smiled kindly at her. Hello, Katie. Can you tell us about your friend? Katie took a deep breath and found her confidence. Zektar came to our farm when he was hurt and scared. I helped him because that's what you do when someone needs help. He taught me words in his language, and I taught him words in mine. He tells me stories about other planets and shows me how aliens count numbers. She looked over at Zektar, who nodded encouragingly. When I have bad dreams about my parents, Zektar sits with me until I feel better. When Grandma Rose was sick, he made her well again. When Tommy was sad because kids at school were mean to him, Zektar told him stories about brave heroes who were different from everyone else. Katie's voice grew stronger. Some people think Zektar is scary because he looks different from us. But he's not scary at all. He's kind and gentle and smart. He just needed a family to take care of him, like I needed a family after my parents died. She turned to look directly at Judge Warren. Please don't send my friend away. He belongs with us now. We're his family, and he's ours. There wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom when Katie finished. Even some of the court reporters were wiping their faces with tissues. Just as Zektar was about to testify on his own behalf, a commotion arose at the back of the courtroom. The doors opened, and several tall figures in military uniforms entered. They were clearly not human, with the same scaled skin and amber eyes as Zektar. The lead figure introduced himself as Commander Krextil of the Saurian hegemony. He had come to Earth to reclaim the exile Zektar and return him for trial. Your Honor, Commander Krextil said in perfect English, this individual is a criminal who defied military orders. He must return with us to face justice. Agent Webb looked pleased. This would solve his problem nicely. But Judge Warren was not so easily swayed. Commander, you are welcome to present your case, but this court will determine what happens to individuals under our jurisdiction. Zektar stood up slowly. He had known this moment would come eventually. Your Honor, I request permission to explain my actions to the court. Judge Warren nodded. Please proceed. Zektar's voice was steady and calm as he described the events that led to his exile. His military unit had been ordered to eliminate all civilians in a rebel colony, including families with young children. When Zektar refused to carry out these orders, he was branded a traitor and exiled. I could not bring myself to harm innocent families, he said. I had seen too much death in my military service. When I looked at those children, I thought of Katie and Tommy and all the young ones who deserve protection, not violence. He turned to face Commander Krextil. I do not regret my choice. If protecting the innocent makes me a traitor, then I accept that title with honor. Commander Krextil listened carefully to Zektar's testimony. When it was finished, he stood and addressed the court. Your Honor, I came here expecting to find a coward who had abandoned his duty. Instead, I find a warrior who chose honor over obedience. The hegemony has recently learned the truth about the events at Colony 7. The civilian population there was indeed innocent of the charges against them. Many of my people now believe that Zektar was right to refuse those orders. The commander looked at Zektar with something like respect. The charges against you have been dropped. You are free to choose your own path. Judge Warren called for a recess to consider all the testimony. When court resumed an hour later, her decision was clear. This court finds that Zektar poses no threat to Earth or its citizens. His request for asylum is granted, and he will be allowed to remain on Earth as a political refugee with a path to eventual citizenship. The courtroom erupted in cheers. Katie jumped up and down with joy while Rose Morrison wiped happy tears from her eyes. Even some of the government agents looked relieved that they wouldn't have to separate this unusual family. But Judge Warren wasn't finished. Furthermore, this court recognizes the family bond between Zektar and the Morrison family. Legal guardianship. Papers will be prepared to formalize this relationship. Katie ran to Zektar and threw her arms around him. You get to stay forever. Zektar held the little girl gently, still hardly believing what had just happened. He looked around at all the humans who had fought for him, who had called him family, who had shown him what it meant to belong somewhere. Thank you, he said to Judge Warren. Thank you all. 5 years had passed since the day Katie Morrison first found an injured alien in her grandmother's barn. The little red-haired girl was now 13 years old, taller and more confident, but she still had the same kind heart that had seen past. Zektar's fearsome appearance to the lonely person underneath. Cedar Falls had changed too. What started as a small farming town had become known around the world as the place where a human child and an alien warrior became family. The story had touched people everywhere, and other alien refugees began arriving, hoping to find the same acceptance that Zektar had found. The town welcomed them carefully but warmly. There was Lyra, a blue-skinned engineer whose people had lost their homeworld to war. She helped upgrade the town's power systems with clean energy technology. There were the Hendricks twins, who weren't actually twins but were two members of a species that always traveled in bonded pairs. They opened a restaurant that served food from dozens of different worlds. Katie helped with all of them. She had become the unofficial welcome committee for new alien residents, using the experience she had gained with Zektar to help others feel at home. She was learning 4 different alien languages and planned to become a translator when she grew up. You have become quite the diplomat, Zektar told her one evening as they sat on the porch of their house, watching the sunset paint the Montana sky in brilliant colors. I learned from the best, Katie replied, leaning against his arm just like she used to do when she was little. Their house was bigger now. They had added rooms to accommodate Zektar's size and to provide space for the cultural exchange program that Katie ran during summer months. Young humans and aliens lived together for weeks at a time, learning about each other's cultures and forming friendships that would last lifetimes. Rose Morrison had lived to see Katie graduate from 8th grade with honors. She had passed away peacefully the year before, surrounded by her family, Katie, Zektar, and even Tommy, who had grown into a brilliant young man fascinated by alien technology. Rose's last words were to tell Zektar how proud she was to have had him as part of her family. Dr. Amy Chen had become one of the galaxy's leading experts on multi-species medicine. She traveled to conferences on other worlds, sharing the knowledge she had gained from working with Zektar and the other alien residents of Cedar Falls. But she always returned home to the small-town clinic, where her career in xenomedicine had begun. Sheriff Patterson had been promoted to head of the Regional Alien Integration Task Force. He helped other communities learn how to welcome alien residents safely and successfully. His experience in Cedar Falls had made him the most sought-after expert on human-alien community relations. Even Agent Webb had changed his mind about unauthorized aliens after seeing how well things worked in Cedar Falls. He now worked for a different government agency. One focused on helping alien refugees find safe homes rather than just enforcing immigration law. Tommy Mitchell had gotten his wish to learn about alien technology. At 18, he was studying at the Coalition Technical Institute, preparing for a career in interstellar engineering. But he came home every holiday to visit his old friends and to help Katie with the exchange program. On this particular evening, as Katie and Zektar watched the stars appear in the darkening sky, their quiet conversation was interrupted by an urgent beeping from Zektar's communication device. "What is it?" Katie asked. Zektar listened to the message, his expression growing serious. "A refugee ship is requesting permission to land on Earth. They have families with children aboard fleeing from war in the outer spiral." Katie sat up. Straight. "How many?" 47 individuals, 12 families. Katie was already making plans. "We'll need to contact the other communities in the network. Cedar Falls can probably take 8 or 10 families, but we'll want to spread them out so they can get proper support." Zektar smiled at her quick thinking. The scared little girl who had once brought him water and bandages had grown into a confident, young woman who could organize refugee assistance across multiple planets. "Are you sure you want to take on so many at once?" he asked. "Of course," Katie replied without hesitation. "They're scared and alone just like you were, just like I was after my parents died. Everyone deserves a chance to find a family." They prepared to coordinate the arrival of the new refugees. Katie thought about how much her life had changed. She had started out as a lonely little girl, living with her sick grandmother on a failing farm. Now she was part of a family that included beings from across the galaxy. She lived in a thriving community that had become a model for the entire coalition, but the most important thing hadn't changed at all. She still believed that kindness was the strongest force in the universe, and that everyone deserved to find a place where they belonged. "Zektar," she said, as they headed inside to make the arrangements for the refugee families, "do you ever regret coming to Earth?" The alien warrior stopped and looked back at the stars where he had once traveled as an exile with no home and no hope. Then he looked at Katie, the brave little human who had given him both. "Never," he said firmly. "This is where I was meant to be." "Good," Katie smiled, "because we have a lot of work to do. Those families are going to need homes, and schools for their children, and jobs, and friends who understand what it's like to be far from home. And you think Cedar Falls can provide all of that?" Katie looked around at their town, where human children played with alien children in the parks, where multiple species worked together in businesses and schools, where differences were celebrated instead of feared. "I know we can," she said confidently. "After all, we've had lots of practice." The next morning brought news that the refugee ship would arrive in 3 days. Katie immediately began making calls to coordinate housing, medical care, and orientation programs. Zektar worked with the other alien residents to prepare welcome packages and translation aids. The whole community rallied to help, just as they always did. Humans and aliens working side by side, proving every day that family wasn't about species or homeworld or appearance. It was about choosing to care for each other, no matter how different you might seem on the surface. When the refugee ship landed, in the field outside town, Katie was there to greet the new arrivals. She saw the fear and hope in their eyes. The same combination she remembered seeing in Zektar's face that first morning in the barn. "Welcome to Cedar Falls," she told them in their own language, which she had been studying for the past 3 days. "You're not alone anymore. You're family now." And as the sun set on another day in the little Montana town that had become a beacon of hope for beings across the galaxy, Katie Morrison knew that she had found her purpose in life. Making sure that no one ever had to feel alone again.